research. Nostradamus, a.k.a. Michel de Nostradamus. French. What are the odds? Did you know that? I had no idea. This is a French guy that lived in this place in France called Saint-Remy around 1500s. He was born 1503 on December 14th. Happy birthday, Nostradamus, whenever that is. He was one of 9 children born to this woman named Renieri de Saint-Remy and her husband, Romain de Nostradamus. This guy was like a well-to-do grain dealer and like a notary. He was like a prominent person in the town. And in the coming years, this guy, Michel, would become known as a French astrologer and a physician and sort of like a doctor of sorts, and would eventually become the most widely read clairvoyant or seer of the Renaissance. I mean, this guy was like a sensation in his time. He began as a medical student. He had a medical practice in Agen in 1530 with no medical degree. Because at the time, I don't even think you needed a medical degree to do anything. I mean, you just kind of were like, I'm a doctor. And they were like, why are you a doctor? And you're like, because I'm doing surgery on you right now. So shut up and take this potion. It's crazy. So he starts as a doctor, and he was forced to leave the University of Avignon due to an outbreak of the bubonic plague. That bubonic plague. Kind of a bummer. If you miss graduation because of COVID, it's nothing like getting expelled from school because of the Black Death. And then he was eventually expelled from a medical school at the University of Montpellier. He was expelled for his previous work as an apothecary, which is, again, the medical equivalent of a pharmacist. And that was a profession deemed by medical academics of Nostradamus' time as sort of unfit. It was kind of, they saw it as, not really lining up with the proper medical establishment of the time. Other sources state that he was not expelled and actually received his license to practice medicine in 1525. Either way, he continued to practice medicine, and at the time, he also used a Latinized version of his name, which was a common practice amongst medieval academics, from Nostradamus to Nostradamus. And he became a plague doctor. Pretty sick, right? You've seen the old masks of like the plague doctors where they had like the extended nose because they thought that it was the air that was actually causing the disease. This idea of bad air. So they had like these kind of pockets of air that it was almost like a bird thing. And it kind of kept the air away from their nose. And they thought that was going to prevent them from the plague. When in fact, I think it was rats. I think that's what it was. And they were trying to kill cats. They thought cats were causing it. And actually the cats were killing the rats, which was stopping it. So they actually made it way worse. Anyway, 1544, he moved to a place known as Salon de Provence, where he gained renown for his innovation in medical treatments during the outbreaks of the plague, in places like Lyon in 46, 47. And some of these were very progressive methods. Like at the time, he was encouraging hygiene, which again, this is far beyond germ theory and the microscope were even invented. And he was removing infected corpses from the city streets, and he avoided bloodletting, which was a very common practice where basically you let blood go out of your body because they believed that the blood was bad, and if you get rid of the bad blood, then eventually your body can make new good blood. And unfortunately, a lot of people bled out and died. Pretty sure that's how George Washington died. Can someone fact check that? I think that's true. I don't know. If only I had a computer in front of me. Anyway, he creates a rose pill. This is like an herbal like lozenge made of rose hips. It's just it's like a root. And it's rich in vitamin C and it provided relief to patients with mild causes of the plague. And his cure rate was impressive. I mean, this guy was like a legit doctor that was curing people and helping people with early versions of the plague. And though much can be attributed to keeping his patients clean, administering like low-fat diets and providing fresh air, he had an amazing practice and was really helping a lot of people. And as a result of that, he ends up becoming like a celebrity doctor in the south of France. Like in 1534, Nostradamus lost his wife and children while away on a medical mission in Italy. And this caused people to question his notoriety as a plague doctor because they're like, wait a second, this celebrity doctor, his whole family just dies? Like, how good of a doctor can he really be? So he goes under some scrutiny for that. Fast forward, 1538. Nostradamus makes casual remarks about a religious statue that landed him with a charge of heresy. Again, in France at this time is extremely Catholic, and he was ordered to appear in front of the Inquisition. Yes, not the Spanish Inquisition, French Inquisition, which is just a little stuffier. It's a little more snobbish. Like, oh. This is a powerful office within the Catholic Church in those days whose aim was to, like, combat heresy and blasphemy and witchcraft and anything else that was considered deviant at the time. And Nostradamus dodged his summons and left Provence and traveled through Italy, Greece, and Turkey for a few years. And it's alleged that during these travels across Europe, Nostradamus experienced this psychic awakening. And this is where we get the Nostradamus that we know today. According to the legend, Nostradamus came across a group of Franciscan monks while traveling through Italy. And this is one of the early stories of one of his premonitions and sort of psychic powers coming to fruition. These group of Franciscans, they're traveling across like a muddy road near an Italian town of Ancona, and they see the solitary doctor walking towards them. Nostradamus steps aside to let them pass, but before they had done so, he kneels in the mud in front of one of them, Brother Felice Peretti. The friars are all kind of like confused. They're like, why is this doctor just kneeling in front of only one of us? It's kind of weird, right? Peretti was of lowly birth and had been someone that was, they call them swineherds at the time. He's basically someone that like raises pigs on a farm. It's like the lowest job you can have. And before joining the Order of St. Francis and becoming a Franciscan monk, Nostradamus tells them, I must cede myself and bend a knee before His Holiness. And again, he doesn't do it to all the monks. He does it to one specifically, the lowest of the monks that comes from a pretty unsubstantial family. And the monks kind of react with kind of an amusement. And Nostradamus must have appeared crazy, just on a muddy road, just like, my liege. And all the monks kind of just go on their way. However, 40 years after this chance encounter on a muddy road, and 19 years after the death of Nostradamus, Brother Peretti, the one monk that Nostradamus knelt in front of, was elected Pope, Sixtus V. Pretty weird. So let's talk about Nostradamus and his sort of interest in sort of occult knowledge. 6 years after Nostradamus felt he'd been away long enough to dodge the Inquisition in France, he then returns to France and resumes treating plague victims. 1547, he settles down in his hometown of Salon de Provence, marries a rich widow named Anna Postard, and has 6 children. Pretty good number. After he had settled for a few years, Nostradamus begins to shift from medicine into sort of trying to ascertain occult wisdom, things that, you might find in, secret books that you can try to gain type of knowledge from that are outside of the common, knowledge traditions of a university or of a religion. And he spent hours at night, allegedly, meditating in front of a bowl filled with water and herbs in order to induce like a trance to bring on visions. And it was these visions that gave him the basis of his predictions of the future. What was in that bowl? That's what I want to know, right? A bowl of herbs. Maybe he was ripping some. I don't know. I don't know exactly what it was, but it seems, it seems kind of on the nose. Nostradamus. Anyway, let's talk about some of his prophecies. 1550, he begins writing his first almanac of like astrological information and predictions for the coming years. The almanacs are publications containing astronomical and meteorological data for a given year that often include an assortment of other like miscellaneous information. And almanacs at the time in France are extremely popular because alongside the predictions of the following year, they provided useful information for farmers and merchants, and they contained like little bits of like folklore. They were kind of just like casual reading that people would use that would have like some weather data, but also just, stuff of the day kind of stories. And it was within these almanacs that Nostradamus introduced to the French public his first prophecies. And it is thought that he used basically what's known as like judicial astrology. And this is like the art of forecasting future events by calculating the planets and celestial bodies in relation to the earth at various points in time. And he's also kind of imbuing with them the visions that he had had while meditating in front of this bowl of herbs. Anyway, many modern day scholars, namely this guy, Peter Le Mesurier, my French is falling apart as we're talking. This guy was a Cambridge linguist and like a translator who wrote like a ton of books on Nostradamus. They're starting to think that Nostradamus was neither an astrologer or a prophet, but simply a believer in the fact that history would repeat itself. So this is sort of a non-mystical explanation for someone like Nostradamus, that he wasn't necessarily translating some type of divine apparition, but rather was just an extremely intelligent guy that was able to intuit past events, therefore leading to future events. But that is, I guess, up to us to figure out. To each their own. Others think that he was using ancient techniques known as bibliomancy. This is the use of books in divination to make his predictions. He would basically like select extracts from ancient texts, mainly prophecies of like the apocalypse from the Bible and other, such like ancient literature that he could find, and then making these kinds of like calculations based on, the recurrence of these events to the future. His almanacs, regardless, received a great response from the French at the time, and his name quickly spread around the country, and people were just trying to get their hands on his almanacs and his predictions. Following the success of these almanacs that he was writing, in which his prophecies are really the thing that everyone wants to read about. They don't give a shit about the weather. They're like, what is this guy talking? And he decides to set out all of his visions in a masterwork, sort of his opus, which he titles Centuries. He planned to write 10 volumes in which he would make, 100 predictions, each forecasting the next 2,000 years. He published the first volume in 1555. The works consisted of, it's almost like written in like a riddle type form. It's like a limerick or something. It's technically called a quatrain. This is a rhymed 4-lined verse grouped in hundreds. Each set of 100 is called a century, thus called the Centuries. Scholars suspect that he used this like poetic method to communicate his prophecies, possibly because he was worried, again, by this French Inquisition. He didn't want to appear before this court, so he was like, okay, maybe if I write it in this sort of shrouded language, then, I can just be like, oh, this is literary. This is not a prophecy. I'm not using divination. I'm not a part of the occult. I'm just a guy. I'm like a poet. And in these sort of quatrains, he uses a mixture of languages such as Greek, Italian, Latin, and even like a dialect of French used in the place that he lived. And again, this is likely used to further disguise his potential controversial prophecies. According to Nostradamus, he wrote in allegories because, again, he feared that his prophecies in too much clarity upon his readers might cause unrest and, again, would potentially put people into chaos, and the church would come down on him and the monarchy. And just the nature of the powers that be at the time would see him as a potential threat. Or it's possible that he was worried that his prophecies would, be prevented from coming true if everyone knew the future like he did. It's kind of like a logic trap. If he's, if I say, oh, this thing's going to happen in the future, then everyone can stop it from happening, and then therefore his prophecies don't come true, which therefore affect his ability to be a clairvoyant or a seer. It seems like a convenient cover-up, but regardless, this is how he wrote it. I mean, Nostradamus himself goes on to say that such secret events should not be manifested except by an enigmatical sentence. So that's how he wrote it. And in 1555, he published La Prophéties, a collection of his major long-term predictions. And oddly enough, Nostradamus enjoyed a good relationship with the Vatican. Didn't see that coming. It's believed that he avoided prosecution for heresy by the Inquisition because he didn't extend his writings to the practice of magic. He was very specific about this. His popularity grew, and he became one of the most famous figures of the Renaissance. But Nostradamus did run into some controversy with his predictions, as some thought that he was a servant of the devil, and others said that he was fake or insane. However, many more people believed that the prophecies were spiritually inspired. So now Nostradamus has published tons of his prophecies, and he publishes his centuries, and now he enters into high society. His growing fame, thanks to some of his prophecies appearing to have come to life, made him attractive to a lot of people, specifically to Europe's elite class. One of the people that takes a great fascination in Nostradamus is Catherine de' Medici. This is the queen consort of King Henry II of France and was one of Nostradamus's greatest admirers. She just loved him. She read his almanacs in 1555 when he published them, where he hinted at unnamed threats to her family. So she summons him to Paris to explain and draw up horoscopes, which is basically just like forecasting a person's future for her children. A few years later, she made him counselor and physician in ordinary, basically a personal doctor of King Henry's court. It's pretty amazing. And then in 1556, while serving in this capacity, Nostradamus explains another prophecy from Century 1, which he assumed to refer to King Henry. Now, this is where it gets wild. The prophecy told basically of a young lion who would overcome an older one in the field of battle, and he would die a cruel death. Nostradamus warned the king he should avoid ceremonial jousting at all cost. Now, this will come up later. Remember this. The lion that will overcome the older one, and he should refuse to do any ceremonial jousting. Put a pin in that. During this period, the Roman Catholic Church had a body called the Congregation of the Index, which would basically censor books that they saw to be heretical, but they never condemned Nostradamus despite his popularity. However, with his cryptic style and provocative content, his prophecies continued to stir up controversy, and people would talk about them all the time, furthering Nostradamus' fame. Now, Nostradamus is famous across all of France. The Renaissance is in full swing, and he is known as the seer, the person that can see the future and has made friends with people in high places. But his greatest prophecy of all is maybe his own death. He suffered from gout and arthritis for much of his adulthood, and later years his condition worsened due to enema or dropsy, which is basically, this is probably too technical, but it's fluid like accumulating underneath the skin and within different cavities of the body. And it's believed that this may have caused his heart to fail. He was found dead in his bed in the morning of July 2nd, 1566, at the age of 62. It's alleged that his final prophecy was made on July 1st, the day before, when he told his secretary, "You will not find me alive at sunrise." That seems like a prophecy I could make come true, right? Like, hey, you're never going to see me again, and then just kill yourself. I don't know. Regardless, let's go through some of Nostradamus' prophecies at the time that came true, some of the other ones that much later after his death came true, and then even some of the prophecies that have yet to come true but might. Let's talk about it.